The herring gull, one of the iconic sounds of the Isle of Man and coastal areas of the British Isles for centuries. However, its numbers are in serious decline, so much so that it's now listed on the red list of birds of conservation concern on the island, along with other well-known and loved birds such as the oystercatcher, the puffin and the cuckoo. However, unlike them, whilst known to everyone, it is after all what most people mean when they talk about seagulls, it isn't, it seems, well loved. I'm Howard Kane. In this programme, we'll try to discover what the problems are, what can be done, and perhaps crucially, does anyone care?
They were the first bird to be protected here because they used to clean up after the herring gulls. When the herring gulls were gutting the fish, all the mess on the harbour side was cleaned up by herring gulls. So Tynwald protected them way back in 1863 or something like that. So a really useful bird for us because they clean up our beaches, but they'll also clean up your ice cream.
Numbers on herring gulls, are they staying steady or are they gone up or down?
No, sadly they're not. They're going down. They've halved in the last 10 years or so, possibly because they're eating the same sort of junk food that we eat. But if you go scurrying around rubbish tips and opening black plastic sacks, then you're going to be eating rubbish. And that may be the reason. They're also being pushed off their nesting sites to some extent by disturbance, which is a shame. We should keep away from herring gull colonies during the spring.
Now, I don't know whether you can hear any gulls today. You can probably hear the sea in the background, down at Peel, looking out across the bay on an early autumn day. And actually, as we're standing here just in the lee of the wall looking out across the bay, there appears to be no shortage of them. There's a lot also turned against the wind in the way that they do. Comparatively quiet actually for herring gulls. We all know how noisy they can be on a good day, and I'm sure you've all got your own tales. And to start us off in this discussion, we've come down onto the beach with Laura McCoy and Lee from the Manx Wildlife Trust. Now Laura, you started this off to a degree when we were talking a while back. You're something of a herring gull fan, would I say? Is that right?
Yes. No, I do like them. I think they're very characterful. And for me, they're one of the things that epitomises the seaside. And one of the things that I noticed when I first moved here about 4 years ago was, the noise, like just living next to the seaside. And part of that soundscape is the sound of gulls. And working with sound as you do, if you were doing a recording and trying to set the scene for the seaside, one of the things that you would like to have in the background is that noise, because that's what people think about when they go on holiday with buckets and spades. It's just all part of it, and I think they're intelligent, acrobatic, resourceful birds, and they don't deserve the reputation that they have.
Well, there's one view. We've got Lee here from the Manx Wildlife Trust as well. A gull fan or a herring gull fan, Lee, or not?
Yeah, I'm a herring gull fan. There's a famous poem about the sea by a guy called John Cooper Clarke, who's a bit of a punk poet, and he talks about 1,000 shrikes as an image. And as a kid, you think about herring gull sounds. And so, yes, I am a gull fan.
Looking out today, as I say, they're actually fairly quiet as we're standing right here at the moment. They do have a bit of a reputation. Now, recent numbers, and the red list has been published just quite recently, I think, of birds of a conservation concern on the Isle of Man, and people might be surprised to see the herring gulls there.
Yes, I was shocked because I learnt about this, the survey work that went into putting together this incredible survey a couple of years ago, and how they were kind of building together all of that data, the amount of trips and counting that they put into gathering as much information as possible, and it was really impressive, and I really appreciate the work that Manx BirdLife and all of the biological recorders and ornithologists put into it, and when they said, oh yeah, the population here has dropped by something like 85%, I was like, what? Like, I just couldn't believe how drastic that was. and that number, that percentage drop is in a relatively short period of time, of a matter of a couple of decades. And I was just like, my gosh, that is a signal of a serious problem. And so I wanted to find out a little bit more about why, but also I want to understand the situation in terms of people's perception of them to help garner more support, because I think they do have a very mixed reputation. Us here are all look on them quite kindly, but I know that their reputation precedes them, and some people really dislike them, and some people even do them, would like to do them harm. And I would love to try and switch that around.
My co-presenter on Late Lunch recently moved to Peel and, along with buying a house, without knowing it, adopted a baby gull.
That is the sound of feeding time in the garden for both the chicks and me. Trying to sit outside and have a nice quiet dinner in the sunshine. And Mama Gull turned up and the chicks have gone a bit bonkers. However, the chick that was in my garden now migrated back onto my kitchen roof. So I don't know if that means I'll have more peace or less peace. Hopefully less poop all over the garden, but we'll see. Yes, I know. Annoying, isn't it? Yes. This is the sound of one of the baby gulls coming towards me. There are two of them. Currently one is in my garden, approaching me on the decking right now, and the other is on my kitchen roof. They started on the chimney, and I think they somehow both, as they decided to try their wings, ended up kind of falling into these different places. I think it might be feeding time. They both seem quite hungry.
And that, I think, is exactly the sound that Laura's talking about, the iconic sound of the Isle of Man, the herring gull, squawking, honking, call it what you will, calling from a wall somewhere around the outside or down by a shore somewhere, picky or beach, anywhere around the Isle of Man. You've been here a few years now, Lee. Have you noticed any change in the numbers, or is there any evidence you've seen as to why the numbers might be declining?
The stats we've got, Laura talked about survey, so the 1969 survey, I think it's 85 to 90% down. One thing that Manx Wildlife Trust and M&H are doing jointly is on the calf. So that they're a key species for us in terms of what the calf team are doing in terms of ringing birds. And so that's actually one of the things we're hoping. Anecdotally, what have I seen in 2 years? Now, I couldn't say I've seen less herring gulls in 2 years, but we're keen to delve into this and see what it is. And part of the answer to that is the survey with the colour ringing. So we'd certainly like people, if they see birds colour ringed, herring gulls, the big numbers, take a picture and let us know. But I've not seen a notable change, but the stats, the survey from 2017 compared to 1969 is an 85 to 90% drop, and we'd like to understand that. We want to know why, because if that graph keeps going, then there is a risk that they do disappear.
And do we know how the Isle of Man then stacks up? Because again, we're saying it's iconic on the Isle of Man. Of course, it's hardly unique to the Isle of Man. It's widespread across the UK. Is this mirrored in the UK? Yeah,
the population declines across the UK from a quick Google search. The stats from the RSPB, it looks like over the last 30 years that they reckon there's a 50% plus drop across the whole of the British Isles. So you might say that we're actually worse with an 80 to 95% drop here. The thing that we're keen that people understand in the Isle of Man is that the way that people behave impact on the way that the herring gulls will behave. And I think that issue about, if the food source of them at sea is declining, be that through climate change, overfishing, industrialisation, whatever those reasons are. If the food source is declining and there's an easy food source inland, be it from rubbish bins or people feeding gulls, their behaviour probably certainly over the last 10, 15, 20, 50 years will have changed, and the two factors come together. So we put a post out on social media recently about herring gulls, and we raised this issue, and it was good. It got quite I wouldn't say heated's the wrong word, but people have strong opinions. People come back saying, "What are you on about? These things they keep robbing me, and there's lots of them. What's the issue?" And probably there's a bigger conservation context than this. Is that sometimes what you see in a close, if it's pinching your chips, is not the bigger picture. And one of the things that we and M&H are keen to do is through this, hopefully this radio interview will be a tiny bit of getting people to understand that there is a bigger picture.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's, humans tend to live their lives and carry on, and often don't appreciate the impact that they're having in a wider picture. So they're called herring gulls because they used to eat herring, and then we like herring as well, but we're very good and efficient at harvesting things, so we liked herring and needed the herring to feed people so much that we virtually wiped them out. And there's, compared population wise of herring, there's a lot less now than there used to be. And so the herring gulls are like, well, where's my dinner? Like, they used to be there, and we were using that food source for thousands of years, and now it's not there anymore. What do we do? And then we were very gracious in giving them our landfill sites. So then they had an alternative food source to go to from our waste, and they did that very effectively. And I'm sure everyone's seen pictures on the television of lots of gulls on landfill sites. And then, of course, we said, landfill isn't very good for the environment, so we're going to stop doing that and we're going to cap them. And then all of a sudden, these gulls are left with nothing. And so their population, I think that's probably one of the contributions of, why their populations have dropped very drastically recently, is because, we've kind of taken away that artificial buffer that they had, which maybe we would have been signalled earlier on that their numbers were going to drop. But we kind of eked them out, giving them something else to go to. So, and I guess it always comes down to we don't have any more right to be here than anything else. We constantly put ourselves first, and it's like, but they deserve to be here, and they were here a lot longer before us. So, we have to try and be understanding and kind towards other living things, and appreciate that if you lose the odd sandwich every now and then, they've lost an entire food source, so maybe we should just accept it.
Peel and seagulls always seem to have a bit of a link, don't they? Whether it's down by the bridge or the quay or the fish kiosk or the kiosk on the promenade or one right down over by the breakwater. Let's see what a few of the folk around Peel think about seagulls. You can't think about walking along Peel's seafront without thinking about seagulls now, can you? Herring gulls, seagulls, what do you think of them? Do you like to see them around town in Peel or not?
Don't mind them, but some of them need culling, because they attack down, take your sandwiches, and then when there's kids eating ice creams and stuff.
Too many of them. Would you be surprised to know their numbers are going down?
Yeah.
You would? You think there's still plenty around? Too many around?
It's plenty around here, but it's just the ones that are attacking the kids and that. I've been walking in town, and I've literally just got to eat straight beside you. Take it off you.
So, yeah. Not a fan then?
I don't mind them. It's just the odd one. Just that there's obviously ones that are getting fed. It's obviously encouraging them. No, I like seeing the wildlife.
Do you like herring gulls round town, or do you think they're a pain in the proverbial?
Time they were cold.
Oh, you're not a fan?
No, not at all.
And why is that?
Well, they're just a nuisance, aren't they? You can't get any peace, certainly, when they've been nesting, and don't get me wrong, they're only doing what they've got to do to survive. But there's too many of them now, I think.
And yet, would you be surprised to know then all the figures indicate apparently their numbers are going down?
It doesn't feel like it. And certainly it didn't feel like it in the summer. It's, people have different opinions about them, and you've got to accept them as well.
Do you think you've missed them if they weren't around?
Of course you would, but there's just too many of them. But then it's our fault, isn't it? Because they're only feeding on what we're producing and not getting shut off.
I like herring gulls, but I like them where they belong, on the coastline.
So you don't like to see them in town?
I don't like the way that they populate the town, no, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the herring gull. It's just that they've bombarded us, if you like, with coming into town, but no.
Do they add anything to the town with their calls and their antics and wheeling in the air and such like, or would you miss them if they weren't?
I don't mind. Of course I'd miss them. We all like birds. We all like herring gulls too. It's just maybe that once too often when they sort of feeding on the curry that's left lying around and so on. That's the problem, isn't it?
So perhaps if we didn't leave the mess, then...
Exactly. So, yeah, they belong here.
Too many of them.
Too many of them?
Yeah.
Would you believe that their numbers have been going down? They're now on the red list on the Isle of Man for birds for conservation concern?
No, not in Peel. Maybe the rest of the island, but not in Peel. There's loads of them.
Too many?
Too many.
Would you be in favour of trying to conserve them? Do you think Peel and the island would be a worse place without them?
I wouldn't miss the noise that they make all the time, but it would be a shame if you didn't see them at all. So, and I wouldn't want anything horrible to happen to them.
So you wouldn't want a cull or anything like that?
No. They can just go and live where they should do, over on the cliffs, away from the houses and rooting through your rubbish.
They're vicious, actually. They're lovely to look at from a distance, but they're very attacking around here, so there seems to be loads of them. It's probably not the answer you want.
Well, no, the answer is whichever one you give.
I think they've moved away from the sea and moved into the towns, actually, through COVID. Nobody was having chips on the front, so they've gone into the towns now, but yeah, I'd be surprised to say that they've dwindled. They're all right in small doses.
I don't really mind them. I don't mind them at all. As long as you don't eat in front of them, they're all right.
And do you think the sort of, the wheeling in the air and the calls and such like adds something to a place like Peel?
It would, yeah. When the seaside's so near, it would, yeah. You would miss them with their go.
Yeah.
I think so, anyway.
Neil Morris from Manx BirdLife. The numbers of herring gulls declining as they are is telling us that our natural environment, particularly our coastal and marine environment, is not healthy.
And what do you mean by that? Do you mean it's polluted? Do you mean there's been a sort of change in habitat for them, or...?
I think it's an indication of many things. Part of it is our own behaviour as humans and the way that we're affecting the natural environment. Our presence brings with it a lot of waste food, and that's probably the single reason why we consider herring gulls to be a problem in our urban environment. But it's also the way that we're treating the seas. I mean, we have depleted the seas of fish, and the food web is depleted. And seagulls are opportunistic scavengers. They're pretty near the top of the food chain, and when the food chain is not healthy, the indicator species such as herring gulls suffer, and we're noticing those declines very significantly.
Do you think they could actually disappear from the Manx landscape, or are we just talking about their numbers perhaps dropping down, in which case maybe some people would say, well, that's not an issue?
That's a really good question. I without being alarmist, I think, yes, we could do, because if we look for the precedents, they're all around us. The European population of herring gull is crashing. We've got 10% of the birds that we had 50, 60 years ago. They make up about 1% of our biodiversity here on the island. And if we look at other gull species, such as lesser blackback gull, it's not too much to perhaps think that lesser blackback gull could be extinct as a breeding species on the island within the next 10 years. We've only got about 30 pairs left of lesser blackback gull now. Great blackback gull, we think there's around about 80 to 100 pairs less. We had many, many more of those. So perhaps those are the forerunners of what could eventually happen to herring gull.
So what do you think we should be doing then? Clearly, things change. I mean, the way we live and work changes and has changed quite significantly over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I guess there's not much we can do about progress and the way we change our lives. Well, what could we do within that, do you think, to actually help stem this decline?
Well, I think there are two ways to look at it. Firstly, herring gulls are coastal birds, and they're declining because of our impact around the coast, in the seas. But since about 1945, they've started to nest inland, and I think they see buildings like pseudo cliffs, and they need two things to nest. They need somewhere safe where they're not prone to predators, and they need food. And while our buildings will always continue to provide somewhere for herring gulls to nest, if we take away the food source which they find in the urban environment, that will stop them nesting. So I think it's quite simple. I think what we'd like to see is an increase in herring gulls in the right place, that is around the coast and on the seas. But I think in the urban environment where there is conflict, and one understands that while herring gulls don't set out to attack us, all they're really interested is the food, the chip we might have in our hand or the pasty we might have thrown in the bin. I think if you're not someone who's used to dealing with wildlife, it can be quite intimidating. But if we simply stop throwing rubbish away carelessly, if we don't leave our litter bins open so the birds can get at them, actually very quickly we will find that herring gulls will find it pointless trying to nest in the urban environment, because while they might still have physically somewhere to nest, they won't have a source of food.
Do you accept, because obviously you're working with birds all the time with Manx BirdLife, there are certain species, things I'm thinking like maybe the chough and some of the smaller birds, some of the songbirds, they are very popular. People really like those birds, that they are concerned if they see the blue-tit disappear or the sparrow go down or the starling numbers perhaps on the decline. Herring gulls generally, and as we've been trying to see in this programme, aren't well loved. Do you think that makes it a bit of an uphill battle from the point of view of trying to convince people, yes, we need to be concerned?
I'd concede, I think it does make it an uphill battle. As a conservationist, I look at herring gulls the same way I look at any other species of bird. It has a place in nature. It provides an ecological service. It actually provides a service to us as people. It's naturally a scavenger. But I guess it's large, it's noisy, sometimes it's in our face, it's successful, and it's surprising how, as a competitive species ourselves, we don't like things which we consider to be out-competing or successful. And I think because they are large and noisy, we are much more likely to be worried about them. There are many other bird species. If you think about pigeons, for example, the doves in our towns and cities, some people don't like them because they think they're dirty and they spread disease. But most people like them because they're small, they don't make a lot of noise, they sit quite happily on your hand eating a bit of grain or a bit of food. And although the behaviour of rock dove is absolutely parallel to the behaviour of herring gull, I think because herring gull's that little bit bigger, noisier, seemingly more aggressive, then we don't like it.
Our biggest challenge is that the fact that this island is such a wonderful place. Now that might sound crazy, but because it's such a wonderful place and people know that we've got such a wonderful natural environment, I think there's a tendency for a lot of Manx residents to say, we're wonderful, what are some of these conservationists talking about? It's a great place, we all know that. But we shouldn't be complacent, and that's where I think our exhibition about extinction and the fact that we want to talk about herring gulls as an iconic bird that everyone knows and that everyone's got a view on is really, we're hoping, a good conversation about conservation enabler that will get people to think about that bigger context. And a little bit of good news, the numbers this year on the calf have actually gone up. Nesting herring gulls have gone up, and there are herring gulls in front of us now, and I have to say genuinely, and even those that get mugged a lot by herring gulls, I can't believe they would like to go to Peel and have the fish and chips and not have a herring gull there as part of the experience.
Optimistic about their future then, Laura, or not?
Watch this space.
My thanks to Tweet of the Week Supremo Tim Earle, Christy DeHaven, Laura McCoy, Lee Morris, Neil Morris, and the folk of Peel in making this programme. Now, where's my pasty? It was there a minute ago. Where is that path?